All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second Sport Volunteers Thrive with Support recorded webinar. This session is focused on volunteer recruitment. Content throughout this session is heavily focused on planning to recruit, and position descriptions do play a big role here, as well as the different types of recruitment opportunities available to clubs. We really appreciate you tuning into this webinar, and we hope you can get some key takeaways from it. Before we get into the content, I'd like to take a moment to recognise the traditional owners of the lands I'm presenting from today, the Wadawurrung people. I thank them and respect their continuing culture and contribution they make to the life of this region, where I've worked for the past couple of years. I pay my respects to the elders past and present, and the Aboriginal elders of other communities who might be joining this webinar and reviewing this content. So just to introduce myself, my name's Jared Evans. I'm the Club Development Program Coordinator at Leisure Networks. My role is partly funded by the Sport and Recreation Victoria Together More Active funding program. I'm heavily involved in direct one-to-one club support and club development workshops across our region, such as this one. Very grateful to hold this role, having played sports within community clubs at grassroots level all my life. I'm really passionate about building the capacity of local sporting clubs to provide better experiences for their members. Greta, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Greta Connell, and I'm the Program Coordinator in the Sport Rec and Health team here at LN. My work is predominantly focused on working in local partnerships to reduce barriers that children and young people face when it comes to participating in community sport and active recreation.
Thanks, Greta. So while you're tuning into this webinar, it'd be great if you could think about a volunteer recruitment technique or experience that you've found has worked in your time at the club that you're involved with. It'd be good to just reflect on something that's worked in that space and how it played out.
So just to go over what we'll cover tonight in this webinar or workshop. So we'll just recap on sort of volunteering as the big picture, an overview of recruitment, and then we'll break down that topic of recruitment into two key areas, and then some steps that your club may like to take to further strengthen that part of the six-part action cycle.
All right. The big picture. So sport and volunteering are interlinked. If we didn't have volunteers, we wouldn't have community sporting clubs. They make sure every sport, any size, at all levels, do go ahead, and each sport is run safely and is accessible and inclusive to the community of local sporting clubs. We do know that 738,000 Victorians and 14% of Australians do volunteer in sport. This is a big number, but overall we do see that the trend for volunteering numbers in sporting clubs is decreasing. Volunteer numbers do really matter locally at your club. Our aim throughout this webinar is to help you gain the input, assistance and support the volunteers that you do need. And this webinar is concentrating on volunteer recruitment. So what can we do in that space to get more volunteers into your club and keep them around for the long term as well? So volunteering is a big topic. It can be often challenging to address. That's why we've broken it down into some more smaller actionable steps. As I said in the first recorded webinar, there is no magic bullet to volunteering, but there is some small steps that can be taken by clubs to recruit volunteers and to keep them around for the long term as well. Club-specific resources are really critical here, and we'll go through an example of what some of these might look like as we go throughout this webinar. Under volunteer recruitment, key club resources here are position descriptions, so making sure the club volunteers are crystal clear on what their role actually entails and the time requirement that's attached to each role. We also have a resource that we'll show shortly that assists clubs to assess and plan their club volunteer needs. Greta will introduce this and run through it shortly. We do know that Volunteering Victoria are trusted knowledge experts in this space. They do have a number of valuable resources on their website. They have an office in Geelong, and they can be contacted directly to help promote the volunteering opportunities that you do have available at your club, and attempt to connect you with the available talent to fill those roles.
In the first workshop, we dove into the first element of this of the action cycle that has the 6 elements in it. So that was all about looking at your club volunteering needs as a whole and understanding the policies and procedures required to ensure that the rights and responsibilities of the volunteers are met both for the club and for each volunteer. We also covered the really important role of the volunteer coordinator. So tonight we're going to dive into the second element, all about recruitment. Recruitment is not just about attracting enough volunteers at your club, but it's about getting the right people and having them actually really want to stay. These resources will assist you to create positions with reasonable time commitments that volunteers can successfully achieve and assist with both recruiting inside and outside of your sport. Also considering specialist volunteering recruiting. So using different platforms that might help get volunteers. So it's important to note that while we do cover a lot of information and highlight resources available, don't feel like you need to improve and make change to these elements all at once. We know that club volunteers are very busy, and so please just take time to work, just find little bits where you can slowly improve over time. And these resources can also be picked up when it is more suitable to your club. So you might find in a year from now, you're like, oh, we're really working on recruitment. So let's just go back to these tools because they'll be there. Which sort of leads me into the next resource available, which is the sport volunteering website. So just up on your screen, there's the website or a QR code so you can navigate your way there. And that's where a lot of the resources that we'll discuss tonight are being housed.
Thanks, Greta. So there's 2 key elements to volunteering recruitment. So as a club, planning for the positions that you need to operate effectively, and then the recruitment options that are actually available to you to fill these positions. We will take you through both of these key elements in the slides ahead.
So planning for the positions that you need. You focus on this because it helps define the volunteering support that you need within your club, and that will look different at every club and association. It encourages you to look differently at what you need as well. So looking past the "this is how we've always done things" lens, and with planning, you might find alternative solutions that you hadn't previously considered. It also encourages you to set realistic position descriptions. So, for example, overworking volunteers lead to exhaustion and burnout, which I'm sure you've all probably seen at some point. And also other people seeing overworked volunteers can also discourage those people from potentially volunteering themselves, which might, make clubs lose volunteers who could potentially be really valuable. So the first phase here is the assess and plan club volunteer needs. So there's 2 phases of the position description development. Phase 1 is this one about the volunteering needs. So Jared, if you'll just open, so this resource, assess and plan for club volunteering needs, that's found on the Volunteering Victoria website. So that will be up on the screen. There it is. And so, this one is all about outlining the tasks. So going through, whether it's with your committee or your subcommittee, going through and outlining the tasks that need to be done. So for example, the first one, sporting equipment maintenance. And so then in the next column, it's you make sure, so that you can manage people's expectations about a volunteer role, ensure that there's a time put towards that task, and also how many weeks of the year. So, if you've got a winter season, you'll put down how many winter seasons for sporting equipment maintenance, for example. The skills and knowledge required, any barriers to remove that might make the task more undesirable. So for example, timing of maintenance, some things have, almost like an expiry date put on them. So that time is a real barrier. And group like tasks into a specific role. So I guess, ensure that the time commitment for volunteers isn't too heavy. They're more likely to give up their time for short, clearly understood roles. And that might be when you can see all of your volunteer duties listed out, like the task list. And then that's when you can sort of group them into different roles and potentially split those roles into two. And so the second phase is all about, thanks Jared, is all about creating position descriptions. So a carefully written PD helps ensure the purpose, aims and objectives of your volunteer roles are being met. And like we've touched on in the first workshop, it's all about protecting the rights of the volunteer as well. So try to keep the PD brief and simple, and they can and should be varying in lengths depending on the complexity of the role. So some roles, don't feel bad if the PD is short, like a one-pager at most, and other roles that are more detailed may go over to 2 pages or just be that little bit longer. So if there are any PDs that aren't available on the volunteering website that you're interested in, Club Help has heaps of position descriptions on there as well, so feel free to check that out. I'll go through now a sample of a position description. And this one here that we've got open, thanks Jared, is one that's found on the Volunteering Victoria website under their resources library, which we navigated to in the first workshop. So yes, this one is basically showing, to have a brief description of your club. It's also showing who you sort of report to or who your go-to person is, a start and not an end date, but like the term, whether it's for a season, where it is, about the club, purpose, responsibilities, and the responsibilities important just to be really clear about the tasks involved. Any skills and qualifications or checks required, personal attributes, key relationships, and down the bottom, adjusting this role to meet volunteer needs. That one, that's for the club to basically to work it out, and even with the person who is interested in that volunteering role, I guess just you guys can work together and make it so that it is kind of exactly what that volunteer needs. It's also to include how the reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses will be managed. So it's sort of outlined again on that slide. So if you want to just cast your eye over it, something that wasn't included on that position description, but is just a statement about inclusion at your club. So things about how volunteers are valued as part of the whole club, and things are really good to put in the position description.
Thanks, Greta. Moving back to our content, so why do we focus on different volunteer recruitment options at club level? It encourages you to look differently at your volunteer options. It pushes clubs beyond, this is how we've always done things, and it might open up new doors for your club. It attracts volunteers who want to volunteer, but to this point haven't actually thought about sporting clubs as an option. And it broadens the options available to you as a club. In my personal view, the easiest and most efficient way to recruit volunteers is to build a culture of volunteering at your club. Set the expectation from the start that members and players will need to volunteer at some stage across your season. This really sets the one club mentality and could lead to more members joining your committee in future with that volunteer culture set. We do speak in a bit more depth to this one club culture in our first workshop, if you did want to go back and have a look at that recording. Targeted recruitment. It's likely you're already doing this sort of recruitment pretty well. Research by the Australian Bureau of Statistics show that 64% of volunteers first got involved through someone they know or because they were asked to. The lesson here, so think local connections first. So for example, tap into word of mouth, ask your current volunteers to spread the word among friends and relatives. Ask club members and volunteers to post volunteer opportunities on their social media. Post volunteer opportunities on local community social media groups and reach out to community leaders to spread the word. Letterbox drops in your local area. Advertise in local businesses and op shops. Ask your volunteers for suggestions and ideas. Service clubs and associations can also be of help wherever you might be. Approaching your local service clubs and Aboriginal and multicultural associations can form valuable connections to assist your sporting club. Connecting with local universities or TAFEs. I'm sure there's university students out there that would take some really good experience volunteering in grassroots sport, especially if they're interested in pursuing a career in sport and recreation at some point. Other ideas there, neighbourhood houses, councils, community health services, council libraries and local schools as well can also help broaden the range of organisations who might be of assistance to provide you with volunteers or connect you to volunteers that might be able to support your club. Walk-in volunteers. So make sure you plan around how you can communicate with people who might just pop in randomly, whether that's at a training session or at a game day. Make sure you've got a brief resource to promote the club. Something that can be provided to parents or helpers that might come into the club for the first time. Something that connects to a QR code or something similar that takes them somewhere where they're able to articulate what they'd be interested in volunteering in, what their background is, that sort of information. And we spoke to that in the first recording as well. If you want to go back and have a look in at that one. The last stop point there, sometimes a 5-minute conversation, a small amount of information is all you need. I think clubs should start to think about what the experience would be like for walk-in volunteers at their club. Would that reflect positively or negatively upon their club? Maybe in the first instance, it's directing that walk-up volunteer to your club's volunteer coordinator. In my personal view, it's important to have the interests of the volunteer in mind as well. So potentially asking them, what could you see yourself helping out with around the club? Or something like the positions we need to fill are X, Y, and Z. Would any of these align with your interests? Putting the volunteer first and aligning your available tasks and roles to their interests, I think is really important. Online recruitment. So there's many online platforms there that you can see on the screen. These can be accessed through Volunteering Victoria's Recruiting Volunteers webpage on their website. Seek Volunteer is probably the best one. It's essentially like a platform for paid job roles, the Seek platform for paid job roles. However, this one is specifically for volunteering roles. And there is a few local clubs that promote their opportunities on Seek Volunteer, including North Geelong Warriors Footy Club, Geelong Archers Park Run and Bell Park Sports Club. I'd definitely suggest having a look at these online platforms on screen at some point to see whether they might be able to add value to your club. A few recruitment tips to consider. So establish a volunteer coordinator position as well as a game day volunteer coordinator position. This can help you focus. This focus helps you to define and manage your needs earlier and better. We do speak to volunteer coordinators in a bit more depth in the previous recording if you want to jump back in and have a look at that. Important to be flexible in your approach to the roles and how they're structured. So if someone says they would do that role or I would, but see if you can actually remodel the role to fit them and be flexible around what they require. Brainstorm a list of jobs that need to be done throughout a season. Break down tasks and develop a number of smaller volunteer roles to accompany these tasks. The document that Greta went through first in this recording could be really valuable here to break down the list of jobs that need to be done throughout a season. Develop instructions with descriptions and photos that can be given out at short notice to help guide a new volunteer or someone interested in putting their hand up. Really important to make sure they're comfortable to keep coming back and putting their hand up. So important that the task is clear for them. For existing roles, create a task list and work out whether the role can be reduced in size or shared. A lot of volunteers are more willing to give up their time if it's only a couple of hours per week or small time commitment compared to something that's going to take up half their week. They won't want to do that. Important to detail the why. So explain the potential benefits of volunteering at your club to the volunteer. So whether it might be they're able to come along to social functions for no cost. They're able to get some merchandise for free. It could be that you'll be happy to provide a job reference for that volunteer if they're going for paid work, something like that. And important to identify people experienced in roles and then ask them to guide or shadow new volunteers.
Thank you. So this sort of brings us towards the end of the workshop tonight. The next steps. So hopefully throughout this workshop, a few ideas or things have sparked just as to how maybe your club or association can potentially do things differently or something that you might like to try. So yes, I guess the key takeaways or things that you could potentially consider as a next step for your club or association is think about the position descriptions that you do currently have, if you have them. And can they be potentially revised or updated to be a little more appealing to those prospective volunteers? And also to reflect on the way in which your club does recruit volunteers. So using the one club culture approach is something that we believe could hugely benefit volunteering at your club, and a way of managing the workload across a number of people and hopefully many more people. It's a great way to help people feel more connected to their club on a deeper level, and just have that stronger understanding about how great that your club is. So yeah, we'd love your feedback. So there's this QR code here on the screen, or you could click. Oh, I think just use the QR code. It just, yeah, by you providing us with your feedback, it really helps us to improve our service and understand how we can benefit the community most. So Jared and my email address is just up on the screen. We will send out a wrap-up email including the resources that we've showed tonight. They are also available on the Volunteering Victoria website, so you can jump on there and have a look when it suits you. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in, and the next 2 workshops will be in April. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye.